Kia ora, good evening. Welcome to Central News for Wednesday, the 4th of June. I'm Hilary Entwistle. There are only 2 weeks till the field days are here again, and this year is promising to be bigger and better than ever, bringing an influx of visitors to the Waipa district. Mayor Jim Milcrest explains what the field days mean for the district.
Oh, they're a fantastic showcase for the Waipa district, really. I suppose we get hundreds of thousands of national and international visitors to Waipa, but it's a good barometer of the way the economy's going, I suppose, for Waipa. Agriculture being our major earner, economic driver, and look, it has a huge impact on the businesses, not only in Waipa, but all the accommodation is full right through to Hamilton and Rotorua and over to Tauranga. So yes, it's just a fantastic event for the district.
A Bay of Plenty Polytechnic lecturer believes students are beginning to realise the benefits of higher tertiary education, and he's backed up by figures showing 56% of Kiwis studied at degree or postgraduate level in 2013. The recently released Tertiary Education Enrolments 2013 report shows, along with continued growth in higher qualification enrolments by younger students, enrolments fell for older students as employment prospects improved. Tertiary Education, Skills and Employment Minister Stephen Joyce says the 56% figure in 2013 compares to 48% 10 years ago, and demand for tertiary education remains high, with 418,000 students enrolled in formal study programs last year. The top choices in terms of median earnings for young bachelors graduate 5 years after leaving study are medical studies with 110,300, pharmacy 73,000 and radiography 70,400. In comparison, graduates in creative arts brought in median earnings of 42,900. Thousands of Bay of Plenty teenagers will hear life-changing stories firsthand from the victims of dangerous driving in a bid to reduce the number of young driving-related deaths. The Blue Light Safe Driver Expo aims to make teenagers aware of the implications of actions such as driving drunk, driving while texting or driving stoned. About 3,000 Year 11 students from across the Western Bay will hear from guest speakers whose own lives have been dramatically affected through bad driving decisions. This includes a former potential Olympian whose aspirations were destroyed when he was hit by a drunk driver, and a mother whose 2 children were killed in a crash where speed was a factor. A new Active Communities project aims to increase participation and utilisation of East Hamilton's community facilities. The project is a partnership between Hamilton City Council, Sport Waikato, Lugden Park Combined Sports Association and the University of Waikato, and is primarily funded by Sport New Zealand. Hamilton City Council's Swimming and Recreation Manager, Matthew Bayliss, says it's an exciting opportunity for residents of all ages to engage in sport, physical activity and recreation within the area. The project steering group has engaged with local providers to encourage a more collaborative approach in providing services to the community. Now for our region's marine forecast, West Coast, Raglan. 15-17 is your high tide and the southwest swell is easing early on Thursday morning. East Coast Bay of Plenty tending a northeast 10 knots, mainly fine. Thursday's high tide in Tauranga is at 12:29. Just ahead, Anne-Marie heads to Mystery Creek to see how the preparations are coming along for field days. Welcome to Central News on TV Central. With under a week to go until the field days, it's a hive of activity at Mystery Creek. Anne-Marie spoke with Field Days Commercial General Manager Nick Drumgoole, who explained how thankful they are for volunteers at this time of year.
Look, we have 150 passionate volunteers, and some of those volunteers that are on site for our 46th year were here on day 1 of Field Days at Te Rapa in 1968. That is the value of them, that is the knowledge that they have, and they're all very, very keen to give us their views and opinions on the site setup and how we should be running the event. So they're delightful people, and we are so indebted to their contribution they make to this wonderful event.
That's absolutely fantastic to have that longevity and knowledge in volunteers. What areas do they help in?
They help in every part of this event. Setup, hosting, parking, directional, just assisting people, information. Yeah, just so valuable, and as I said before, so much knowledge that comes with them. Without them, it would be very difficult to deliver such a wonderful event.
The New Zealand National Fencing Championships will be held at the Field Days. Tell me about them.
Yes, and fencing is taking on a new dimension this year. We have the Fencing Championships, which consists of 4 events. And in addition to that, we've got the speed fencing, which is it's a unique fencing competition developed by Jim Fairbrother of Fairbrother Industries. And over and above that, we've even invested in a fencing demonstration area. So people who are wanting to come and learn and see new technologies in fencing can, and how relevant it is to their particular lifestyle block or farm, it's all here in one place.
There's a lot more to fencing than just battens, wires and nails, isn't there?
Yes, but again, we're still respecting that fencing competition and where that's come from, and that is it is the Olympics of the fencing competition.
PGG Wrightson and Xero have joined Field Days 2014 as strategic partners with the premier theme, Managing Resources for a Competitive Advantage. Tell me about that. To
me, the joint premier feature partners are an outstanding partnership. PGG Wrightsons represent 175 years of servicing the rural sector, and Xero are using technologies to enable and create opportunities in the financial sector, and particularly as it relates to managing resources. Our resources are important. Water, on the back of 2 droughts, feed supplements, but again, financial and human resources are all part of the Premier Feature strategy.
Nick, thank you for your time.
For more details, go to fielddays.co.nz. Be bright, cyclists. That's the message to cyclists from Bikewise, New Zealand Police and the Western Bay of Plenty Travel Safe team as winter sets in. But it's not just about being bright, there is plenty more cyclists can be aware of on the road.
Yes, Travel Safe is road safety is everyone's responsibility. So looking at that, they need to share the road with motorists, and there are dual responsibilities of cyclists and motorists on the road. And some of those things as a cyclist is they should always follow the road rules, practice their cycling skills away from the road before they go onto the road, always wear a safety approved helmet, make sure they make clear signals when they are following the road rules, and always drive or always wave or give the driver using eye contact with them. That's very important.
As you mentioned earlier, it is responsibility of the motorist as well. What can they be doing?
We follow the Transport Agency's Share the Road, See the Person campaign, and motorists have a dual responsibility as well, that cyclists have as much right on the road as a motorist, and so that motorists should make sure that they watch carefully when they're getting out of their car door. They always scan ahead for cyclists. When the weather is dim or less visible, look ahead to see if there are any cyclists on the road and scan around. Watch ahead for any of those hazards at all, yes.
Do we have many cycle accidents in Tauranga?
In 2013, we had 5 serious fatals in Tauranga and 1 across the Western Bay, and that's one of the reasons why we do a high profile here in Safe Cycling. We run a cycle safety education for Year 5 and 6 students and take it through to intermediate level now, where part of that program takes our students on the road as well. So our cyclists here are getting cycle skills quite young to taking them through. And part of that is the dual responsibility of learning from quite a young age one day you're going to be a driver as well, and you need to follow road rules.
Are there already designated cycle lanes in the city?
Yes, we do. We have quite a few, but we also have off-road pathways as well, and that's part of our share with care on the pathways. So we have share the road for cyclists and motorists, and we have share with care on pathways. And we have a booklet that we send out as part of the Be Bright pack, which shows them the on-road cycle lanes and the off-road that they can link to as well.
What are the legal requirements if we are out there riding our bikes?
The legal requirements, you can actually be fined for having no lights on your bike is $55. You can be fined for no tail light on your bike is $55, and for no red reflector $55. And as part of our campaign, our police work very closely with us. One of our police said to us the other day, they stopped a cyclist who had dark clothing, no lights, no helmet, and what they did was if he brought in his receipt for his helmet, then he would be given the leeway on the fine, and the policeman also, police here, gave him lights to put on his bike and gave him some high-vis gear. So it's all about us trying to be as proactive as we can alongside our communities.
The next roadside checkpoint is at Chapel Street, the Otamotai end, on Monday the 9th of June from 4:30pm to 5:30pm. Coming up after the break, the water quality of our lakes. Welcome back. With over 4,000 lakes greater than 1 hectare, New Zealand scientists have been studying ways to greatly improve the monitoring of water quality in these lakes. Bay Plenty Regional Council Chair in Lake Restoration, Professor David Hamilton, is based at the University of Waikato and explained to Anne-Marie recently how the use of technology could help with this water quality monitoring.
Well, we've got just under 4,000 lakes of greater than 1 hectare, and so it's impossible to monitor all of them physically, but using satellites it's possible to actually be an eye in the sky and look down and basically be able to extract water quality information from those satellites.
How can that be done?
Well, satellites are going overhead all the time, some every 14 days, some once or twice a day. And so it provides us with an ideal opportunity, provided we don't have too many clouds in the sky, to be able to extract that information from what's been back up to the satellite.
And then what do you do with that information?
Well, we process the data so that we can actually get the clarity, the amount of algae in the lake, and perhaps other relevant water quality information such as temperature, that will help us to be able to understand changes through time. And so these satellites, as they go over, we can build up an inventory of information to help us look at perhaps 5 or 10 years ago and see whether a lake really has changed in water quality.
We have an image in New Zealand of clean, green and 100% pure. Is that the case when it comes to our waterways?
Well, we're sort of blessed. We're clean and green because we're blessed with abundant freshwater resources, and generally those resources relative to the rest of the world are in very good shape, very high quality. The difficulty that we have at the moment is that we're changing the landscape very quickly. We're using more water, some of it inefficiently. We're producing more nutrients as we intensify agriculture, and so there are pressures that are being brought to bear on our waterways currently.
Tell me about the effect nitrogen has on our waterways.
So there are two what we call limiting nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus, and they can act either together or independently to control the amount of algal growth that occurs. So what we want to do is maintain the nitrogen and the phosphorus on the land where they can be productive and help our agricultural systems, for example, and not let them get into waterways where otherwise they might stimulate a lot of algal growth and lead to deterioration in water quality.
And there have also been denitrification walls devised. Tell me about that.
Actually, no, we haven't, but we work with people who have implemented that technology, and so it's been implemented here through a program with Louis Schipper. It's also been implemented by the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. But we do a lot of design around, I guess, riparian areas, which are designed to enhance denitrification. What is that process? Well, it's stripping some of the nitrogen out of waterways and putting it into the atmosphere where it exists naturally.
How do you do that?
You create low oxygen conditions. And so it's what we call anoxic conditions. So just like you might run out of air, in effect, on the landscape, when you run out of oxygen, you start to denitrify. You take the nitrate nutrient out of the waterways and you put it into the atmosphere. And that's a very, very easy way of being able to strip out nitrate, lose some of the nitrogen that would otherwise stimulate algal blooms, and put it into the atmosphere where it's, as nitrogen gas, is a harmless.
How is algal bloom harmful to lake life?
Well, that's right. The algal bloom has several potential effects. One of them, some types of algae, the blue-green algae, can produce toxins, and they might harm not only what's in the waterways, but also potentially, if it's consumed by humans, can be toxic. And the other part of it is that as those algal blooms die and as they collapse, they suck oxygen out of waterways, and it can, in some cases, completely deplete oxygen from water systems.
Tell me about the Lake Ecosystem Restoration Program in New Zealand.
Well, what we're trying to do is look at two components. One of them is to be able to potentially control these pest fish. So things like koi carp, being able to either remove them from water bodies or being able to stop them from being transferred and getting into waterways. And that's involved a series of things like trialling sound techniques, sound barriers, trialling physical barriers like bars and rakers to stop them getting into some waterways, and it's looking at poisons as well, potentially. With the algal blooms, what we're looking at is primarily ways to stop the nutrients getting into waterways that would then stimulate algal blooms. So things like denitrification walls, things like certain chemicals that can actually take up and absorb these nutrients, phosphorus in particular, before they cause the blooms.
Water's the main theme of the University of Waikato stand at the field days. Tell me about that.
Well, at the university we've come to the realisation that we've actually got a lot of different components of the water system covered in terms of law, in terms of economics, some of the ecology aspects, and if you want a real solution to the water problems that we have here in New Zealand, then you want putting these people together to better understand the policies, the regulations, and the sort of drivers of deterioration is absolutely critical to being able to solve our water issues.
Just ahead, we catch up with the Problem Gambling Foundation. Welcome back to Central News. Earlier this year, the government announced it was cutting its funding to the Problem Gambling Foundation and shifting the money to the Salvation Army. The foundation is fighting the decision in court, and CEO Graham Ramsey and Councillor Cheryl Smith spoke with Anne-Marie to give an update on the appeal.
Well, the good news is that the Ministry and Crown Law have said that they're not going to introduce the funding cuts. They're going to roll over our existing contracts for a further 9 months, and that's so that they can hear the court case that we are bringing against them to try and understand this decision.
Why do you think government cut funding?
You tell me. I mean, they told us a couple of things. They said it's not about performance and it's not about price. So what we've been struggling to understand is what is it about? Because those are the critical things.
Cheryl, at the time of the funding cut announcement, there was a lot of speculation around the fact that the decision was because Problem Gambling Foundation stood up to the casinos. What are your thoughts?
It's really important for our clients that we're speaking up against gambling harm in whatever form that is, and we've always done that at Problem Gambling Foundation. When you're working on the front line and you're working with people every day suffering with those issues, and they're really impacting seriously on people's ability to live with each other because there's maybe violence, maybe crimes involved, there's a lot of upset and distress, then we really want to be speaking out. for our clients.
How are you fighting the decision?
Oh, we're going to court. We're seeking a judicial review, and Crown Law have agreed that we're going to have our day in court, and our day will be to say, is this a good procurement process? Does this deliver the best result for communities in New Zealand? That's what it's all about.
If the judicial review doesn't go your way, then after 9 months that funding cut stands. What can you deliver at that time?
Well, first of all, we're not planning on that, okay? We think we'll be here. We think we've got a strong case, and we are determined that we will show that, because I think there will be a lot goes if we go in this country, but we ain't going to go. We will be able to continue, and we'll continue as a source of knowledge and expertise, and particularly as a voice for the clients that we see.
Graham, tell me about the appeal to fight the funding cut to the Problem Gambling Foundation.
I think the first thing to say is that we're not funded by the taxpayer. We're actually funded by gamblers. We're funded by a levy that gambling operators collect, and it works out at about 1% of the total amount of money which is lost in New Zealand every year on gambling. And we lose in New Zealand $2 billion a year gambling each and every year. So our appeal says, if that money is being put to preventing the problems that we're seeing every day and dealing with the people who are impacted by gambling, the Crown has an obligation to make sure that they've made the best decision and are getting the best value for money. And we just can't see how that can be the case if our funding is being reduced.
If you or someone you know needs help with problem gambling, call 0800 664 2621 or go to pgnz.org.nz. Now for the weather for Thursday, Hamilton fine with light winds. Your expected high is 16 and an overnight low of 2. The rest of the Waikato mainly fine with light winds forecasted. Paeroa 16 and 6, Matamata 14 and 5, Te Awamutu 16 and 2, Tokoroa 13 and 2. Tauranga fine with light winds 16 and 8 your temperatures. Te Puke mainly fine with periods of cloud. Your expected high is 15 and an overnight low of 8. That is the program for today. We love to hear your feedback. So get in contact with us on our Facebook page or email us at news@tvcentral.co.nz. Join me again tomorrow night where we discuss the housing situation in Tauranga and the commercial interest in field days. I'm Hilary Entwistle. I hope you have a lovely evening.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.